Hey everybody, and welcome to Libromancy, a podcast about the magic of books. Today I'm talking about the Hod King by Josiah Bancroft, so let's start spying on it. First off, I wanted to tell everybody what kind of bingo squares I thought this fulfilled for 2020. It's going to fulfill, at least for me, fulfilled the exploration. There's a lot of exploring new places that goes on. It made me laugh, so it'll fit that square for me. I find this series of books so far pretty optimistic, so I think that is a good fit as well. It also fits big dumb object, because the tower, of course, is a big dumb object, and I feel like it could be used for feminism, because 4 of our 5 main characters are all women, and they're all powerful, strong women that do what they want and need to do, and they get it done. So I think it can fit for that. If you don't think it fits, that's fine. There's plenty of good books that'll fit that square. So let's start digging into this. So as we review the last 2 books, So as we remember, in Senlin Ascends, the first book of this series, Senlin has arrived at the tower with his wife. They became separated. Senlin worked his way up through basement, through to the parlor, and then at the bath, and he ends in New Babel, fearing that his wife has been sold to a wife-monger, and he is trying to figure out how to get to her. The next book, Arm of the Sphinx, deals with Senlin escaping New Babel. He just escaped from New Babel, and their adventures as a pirate ship, their visit of the Silk Zoo, where they meet Luke Mardat, organizer of the Hods, to destroy the tower, and it ends with us meeting the Sphinx and Senlin getting a mission to be sent as a spy in Pelphia, where his wife is being kept. So, as you could guess, the majority of this book is going to take place in Pelphia. It's a kind of a funny little city. It's definitely a city that runs on gossip and fame. The more attention you can attract to yourself, usually the better. I thought it was really funny. They had a mechanical sun that goes across the sky, and then they have to reset it every night. And sometimes it gets stuck, which was just funny. Like, oh yeah, the sun's stuck, it's fine. Somebody will go up and give it a shove, and it'll start moving again later. Super funny. I thought that was great. Some other things, we see a lot of new characters in this book and a lot of recurring characters. I thought it was well done. There were never too many characters that were coming in that I was losing track of older characters, and the way the older characters were brought back made it feel a little bit more believable to me. It didn't throw me out of the story that any specific person was brought back. Did not like the way the book was laid out. It makes sense, and I like it more than I liked it when I was reading it, but it just did not click with me as I was reading it. So the way the book is laid out is you have 3.5 sections. So first section is going to be Senlin. The second section is going to be Iron and Voletta. And then the third section is Edith. And each section covers approximately the same amount of time. And so you with Senlin, and then he cuts away, and then you're back in time to when they split, and now you're with Iron and Voletta. Cut, they get to the end and go back to Edith. You see things from her perspective. Now, what I didn't like about this was that Josiah Bancroft did a really good job of leaving our characters at the most tense spots he could find. It was a hard cut from Senlin when something drastic has just happened, and now we're on Iron and Voletta, before any of this has even happened. And then, you get to the end of their section, and it's a very tense piece, and then we're back. And I didn't like it because I wanted to read more about what was happening to them, and to get on with the story, but it was good. It kept you engaged. It showed all the different facets of what was happening and how they were all coming together. And overall, I think it really enhances the book. I just didn't personally like it because it cut me off from the characters that I wanted to read right when it was getting really, really interesting and exciting. I think that's going to do it about for our non-spoilery section of this book. If you want to go read the book now, or you want to just keep listening, go right ahead. But we're going to get into the spoiler section. So, as we've been talking about in every book so far, every ring or kingdom of the tower has its own specific purpose. And one of the purposes, or the main purpose of Pelphia, is to kind of act as the circuit breaker for the whole tower. So there's circuits they have to flip every so often, and there's fuses that have to get replaced every so often. It's quite an ingenious design that the Sphinx or the bricklayer built when they built Pelphia. And the Sphinx actually made a roller coaster for them to change the fuses. So you'd go on this wild roller coaster ride, you'd put the fuse in its spot, they'd change it out, and then, you keep going. And I think that's really affected the culture of Pelfia, because everything kind of revolves around that game everything revolves around games and political aspirations to be the ones to do that kind of thing. It was really interesting. I like that, we're getting more into that now. We learn, I don't remember so many names of different kingdoms and ringdoms in this book, but none of them, we don't really visit any of them or see anything more of them from a superficial view. But with the amount of detail that Josiah Bancroft has put into, the first 5 or 6 levels that we've seen, really leads you to believe that there's going to be a real reason and a purpose behind every other ringdom in the kingdom, ringdom in the tower, that would be supporting the tower's goals. So let's start with Senlin. He is the first section that we find. He has arrived in Pelfia, and he is pretending to be a Boscopian accountant. Now, a Boscop is just a ringdom, but apparently they are the most boring, stale, dry people you've ever met, ever. Many times he's ordering warm water and toast, which just sounds disgusting, but apparently that's what Boscopians like to eat, because that nobody turns their head at that. They think it's great. They plenty of time try to get him to react by giving him any kind of flavored alcohol or making him ride on a roller coaster, just because they know that a Boscopian would never do that, and then he has to pretend like it wasn't fun and enjoyable and that he'd never done anything like that before, and that was quite funny. So Senlin's mission while in Pelfia is obviously to spy for the Sphinx. She's given him the very vague mission of find out what's going on, why her spies, her little moth butterflies that can record things, are no longer reporting when they're being destroyed, and what's going on with that. So Senlin does what any man who's missing his wife would do and immediately tries to find his wife. Of course, we all knew that was going to happen, and he knows that she's being held married to Duke Wilhelm, who is very prominent and powerful, and he's been trying to curry his favor and get in to actually meet him, and he's had no success. So because he's been having this lack of success, he starts trying to come up with more ideas, figure out ways he can get in to meet Duke Wilhelm. He rescues a Hod who was in a fight. That was an interesting scene. The police later come and are like, well, why'd you help the Hod? And he's like, well, they were, beating him up. They're going to kill him. He's like, so he's a Hod. Who cares? And I thought this was a good thing, because it really showed that Senlin still cares about people. He still cares about even Hods that nobody else cares about in the whole story. And, later on it causes more issues when a whole group of Hods is about to be condemned because of these 2 Hods this Hod that he helped escape. So it was good. We learned more about the Hods there, and we saw a lot about the city. So when Senlin starts trying to meet Duke Wilhelm, one of the things he does is he goes to the Colosseum, where they have Hods fight each other and battle to the death. Not really to the death, because then they run out of Hods, but they make it look pretty good. So he's going to this club that Duke Wilhelm owns, and he's trying to work his way up to Duke Wilhelm, and he is watching the fights, and who gets reintroduced to us but John Turreau. Now, if you remember Turreau, he was with Senlin in the baths, and because of his involvement with Senlin, he was sentenced to become a Hod. I'm sure many of us, like me, thought he was just dead, but no, he's back and he's fighting in the Colosseum. And as Senlin sees that, John Turreau is fighting in the Colosseum, he immediately starts devising a plan to try and free John Turreau so that he can work with him again. And because he's his friend and he cares about him, he doesn't want him to stay there. At this point, in the story, Senlin is trying to work his way in with Duke Wilhelm, and he's invited by Duke Wilhelm to attend a masquerade party. And so he does. And he actually meets Maria, and then he is forced to go on the roller coaster that you ride to change the fuse of Pelfia, basically. And while he's there, he, tells her, hey, I'm working with the Sphinx. Let me get you out of here. I can save you. Don't worry. If you want to stay here, that's fine. But if you want to leave, let me know and I'll get you out. And Maria says, no, go away. I don't love you. You can't save me. I'm happy where I'm at. And so Senlin, accepts it, and he says, okay, well, if you ever change your mind, I'll come get you and rescue you. And then he leaves, and, he gets depressed a little bit, but he still continues to work as the Sphinx's spy. Now, a little bit later, after Senlin has worked his way up a little bit, he is working on a deal to free and to buy John Turreau so that he can, free him and they can work together again. But he is revealed to be Thomas Senlin. His disguise is revealed by a dancer that Duke Wilhelm actually buys for him, and it happens to be the girl who he robbed, and the girl with her father who he robbed on his way to visit the Sphinx in the last book, came back to bite him in the butt, and then, Duke Wilhelm realizes, oh, you're Senlin, I know who you are, you're my wife's husband, I can't let you go, so he sentences him to be a Hod. So they take him, they shave him, they give him the medal with his debt inside of it, and they put a blinder on him, which is the first we've seen of this, but just kind of imagine like a bucket that's a little flared, and it goes around your neck, and then you can't, see or hear anything, and it causes a lot of them to be sick, and then he gets thrown into the Black Trail with John Turreau, because that's who he's trying to rescue. And I'm going to cut you off there, because that's where Josiah Bancroft cuts us off at. And, why would you cut us off right when he's becoming a Hod? Well, that leaves the good tension in there. So let's go back to Irene and Voletta. So Voletta has been working with Byron, the Sphinx's pet mechanical stag, to pretend to be a lady of high society. So she's pretending to be the Sphinx's niece. And, part of this actually works in her favor that she's so bad about it, because it allows her to stay in the limelight a little bit longer. So she's placed into the care of Duke's daughter, Xenia, who she is learning the ways of Pelphia with her. She is attempting to get close to Maria in order to, effect a rescue on her. That's been her goal from the Sphinx, is to get to Maria and to rescue her. Of course, she is ever the daredevil and goes climbing at night and happens to meet the prince, who is a scoundrel, we learn from many sources, but obviously she doesn't know that, and she knows that he has the power to get her to Maria, so she agrees to go to a play with him. They go and see Maria perform, and during one of the breaks, she's allowed to go back stage and visit her. Now, of course, after she explains that she is also there to rescue Senlin, Maria again refuses and says that it's not possible and that she's happy and to just leave her alone. However, at the last second, it is revealed, Maria's baby comes in and she's, apologizing to the nurse that she couldn't bring him earlier, but the Duke wouldn't allow it. And Voletta sees and understands exactly why Maria is refusing to leave, because the Duke has the hold of her daughter over her, and she knows that she wouldn't leave without her. So on her way back to Iran to, leave with her and go back to their ship with Edith, she is accosted by the prince, who drags her into a room and tries to have his way with her, and they fight. And, Voletta's doing good because she's such a daredevil, until she is not, and until she's, shot in the head. And I did not like that one bit. I did not like that she died. Like right there. That was horrible. It was painful. The way he wrote that scene was just, it was great. He made you believe she was getting out of it, and then she dies. And then Irene, bursts in and sees the prince standing over her, and then she brutally murders the prince, which was great. I loved it. She rushes to Voletta, and luckily, I know, tease. Luckily, Voletta is still breathing, just barely. And so she rushes Voletta back to the airship. And what happens again, you guys? The airship crashes. Now, we get to cut a switch again, and now we're going back to Edith, because just like that's where Josiah Bancroft cut it out, that's where we're going to cut it. Like I said, he just leaves you at these brutal spots where things are happening and you're like, I need to know what's going to happen next. But he just cuts it and says, nope, we're going back in time and you'll see what happens later. So Edith is working is the captain of their new ship that the Sphinx has given them. She's a fully qualified wakeman now. Her job, as it was, before they arrive in Pelphia, was to just go to other ports and to show off the power of the Sphinx. So she goes and shows off her power, shows that the Sphinx is active again, collects a couple portraits of the bricklayer's daughter, and then they arrive in Pelphia. And in Pelphia, she meets Georgina Haste, who is the wakeman of Pelphia. She strikes it off great with her. They both are women in power. They both have a lot of part of their body replaced by the Sphinx. And so they have this great kinship and this love of each other. Now, while Edith is in Pelphia, she starts looking for Senlin and is unable to find him because, of course, he's been sent off to be a Hod. But she doesn't know that, so she's investigating and trying to find things. And one of the things she does find is that there is a library under the Colosseum that the Hods can get into. And they get in and find that there's some Hods that have been studying and working on a project underneath the library. And, what is that? Who is it about? And they don't know. And so they go back to their ship, and Edith invites Georgina on because they're such good friends, to have dinner, to have just a good friendship. And Georgina betrays her because Georgina has been won over by Luke Modat that the tower is evil and needs to be destroyed, that the tower does nothing but eat men and spit them out as trash, as Hods. And so they have to fight, and Edith has to kill her friend, Georgina. It was quite touching and sad the way they played that out, along with being boarded at the same time. It was a great couple scene, but sad that she lost such a good friend. And even at the end, their friendship and their yearning for having that was still there. It was good. After this, Edith, of course, decides that she's not playing nice anymore, so she visits the king and demands what she needs, and demands in a very stern and forceful way. And then she goes to Duke Wilhelm, and she brutally beats him and tells Mari, come with me, you're leaving, he will never hurt you again, and we're gonna go find Senlin and rescue him now. And so Mari, of course, runs off and gets her little baby and comes with them, and now she knows, hey, these people do have the strength to fight and protect me. And so they leave, and now they are flying back to the Sphinx and trying to figure out where Senlin is. And we cut off there, which was finally a good spot to cut off. We've talked about them, they kind of finished their story. Now we're going back to Senlin. Senlin and John Thoreau on the Black Trail as Hods. So their only way they can work off their debt, as we learn, is to haul things from one ringdom to the next. Now not all Hods have a map, but if you do, the only way to read the map is to read which incline is higher and by how much. And so they are trying to, go anywhere. As they are on the Black Trail at the very beginning, they also meet somebody else that we know before. They meet Fingal. If you don't remember, Fingal was the head of New Babel, where Senlin worked as the quartermaster, and where he planned his revolt to become a pirate. So they all have to work together to survive. They are looking for Luke Modat or any of the zealots there, so that they can free Senlin of the blinder, so that they can keep moving forward. So they can come up with a plan. Luckily, the same Hod that Senlin freed is there and removes the blinder from Senlin, and then gives them a choice that they can die there, all three of them, or they can journey to Luke Modat together, and then he can decide. And so they journey. They decide to go together, of course. Plenty of bonding moments, but not a whole lot of bonding going on because they all hate each other. John Thoreau and Fingal hate each other, and Fingal hates Senlin for obvious reasons. So not a whole lot of bonding going on, but when they get back to Luke Modat, they find that he has built a monstrous machine in the form of a trilobite. Now, you don't know what that is, kind of imagine like a small shell with lots and lots of little legs, pincers. It's kind of just scary the way, if you think about the one they built being so big. And Luke is bragging to them that the time is at hand, and the destruction of the tower is going to become soon, and that he brags that this Hod King, which is what they call this machine, takes over 100 Hods to run it. Very powerful. Senlin can immediately grasp the implications of what's going to happen with that if it gets loose, if Luke Modat sends it off to destroy a ringdom or two. And so he has to, say to Luke Modat that, yeah, hey, I believe now. I met the Sphinx. It was horrible, but I understand why you fight her, fight the Sphinx. I also want to fight the Sphinx with you. And luckily, he is believed, but that's kind of where our book wraps up, is that Senlin is with the Hods, and Edith, Iron, Voletta, and Mari are all on the outside trying to figure out a way to save him and potentially save the tower. So again, I really liked this book. I did not much so like the style, but I thought it worked really well for the way it was. I still would recommend it to everybody. Definitely worth the read. And that's going to wrap up my discussion of The Hod King by Josiah Bancroft. Thanks for listening, everybody, and thanks to David Hillowitz for the intro and outro music. If you have any questions or comments, please send them to libromancypod@gmail.com, and remember to spy on the magic of book.